Giving to your local church should be easy, and with Tithely, it is. Just download the app and securely register your credit or debit card. You're done. Now you can give during church services or anywhere else. Use Tithely to give a one-time gift or set up recurring donations. It's that simple. It's fast, secure, and easy to use. Tithely, the simplest way to give to your local church.
But it couldn't feel me. Men's empty praise, treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together, and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all and still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy
Together, we are creating a new future for the Valley because of your generosity. Your financial support is being used to produce content and create a loving community that is bringing hope to hurting people during the COVID pandemic and quarantine. Your giving equips New Soul Rebecca with tools to provide access to our services and support for people who can only meet with us by phone. Because you give, the hungry are being fed, and we've launched a winter warmth campaign to protect people in the Valley from the cold this season. With your help, in 2021, we're not slowing down, but ramping up a campaign to expand our digital reach to help and inspire more kids, students, singles, families, and seniors. Your giving is making a difference in the community. 1 Timothy 6:17-19 says, "Don't be full of yourselves and obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Go after God, who piles on all the riches we could ever manage. Do good. Be rich in helping others. Be extravagantly generous. If you do that, you'll build a treasury that will last, gaining life that is truly life." We have quick and easy ways for you to give. Online, newsoulrebecca.com. By text BLESS to 94000. By app, download the Tithely app. Or by mail, New Soul Rebecca, P.O. Box 574, Rebecca, New Mexico 87560. To receive text updates from New Soul Rebecca, text Rebecca to 94000.
One of the great joys of my life is playing basketball. It was the biggest part of my life growing up as a kid and a young person. And I was fortunate to play with a group of talented and competitive players for most of my adult life as well. We played with college and pro players as well as weekend warriors who were really good players. For those of you who have played competitive sports, you know how intense it can be sometimes and how it can get a little volatile. Most of us were good friends and developed a really tight bond and could handle those volatile moments when the competition got a little too intense. And when we did, we could apologize and move forward. But once in a while, someone would come in to play with us who was a little bit of a hothead, had a short temper. These guys would play angry. They would talk trash. Every time you'd score on them or keep them from scoring, they would take it personally. And their anger would just increase. Playing with people like this was always very unpredictable. Sometimes they would kick the ball or slam the wall. Sometimes they would push or hold you as a player or foul you hard to keep you from scoring. Playing against people like that always made me want to talk trash right back. They inspired me to change the way I normally played to make sure I scored on them more. I wanted to shut them up, make shots in their face, put it right in their eye. Their mean way of playing inspired me not only to beat them, but to try to humiliate them. They definitely changed the way I played. Have you noticed that mean people tend to gain a measure of control in your life? By mean, I'm talking about angry or harsh, unpleasant, sometimes deceptive people. They control us with time or money or their attitude, their sulliness, they just don't speak. They just look away. You never know what they're thinking. They don't open up to you. Maybe it's someone who is unkind to our kids or our grandkids. These are the kinds of people that when you see them coming, you just want to avoid them. From time to time, and let's be honest, all of us can be the mean person that somebody else thinks of. In this series, friends, we have been talking about how to successfully manage the most important things in life, and that is our relationships with other people. Today, we're going to talk about how to respond to the mean people in our lives, because all of us eventually will have to deal with mean people. It's important to know how to deal with them ahead of time and to have a plan, because if we're not proactive before we interact with mean people will gain a measure of control over our lives. We'll talk about them on the phone with someone on the way home or thinking about them. in the shower, like we're thinking about the things we're going to say to them, we're angry at them, we're replaying what they did over and over again in our minds. It's why we try to avoid them, because mean people keep us off balance. When we're off balance, we're forced to compensate, right? When you're pushed off balance, you need pressure to go the other way, forced to go the other way to keep you upright. When we're hit with unkind or hurtful words or actions, it knocks us off balance. And our natural tendency is to get back on balance by using unkind and hurtful words and actions in response. Like when I was playing against mean or angry players, and I wanted to compensate with anger and meanness to regain my balance. Instead of doing to others as Jesus has done to you, it's do unto them as they have done unto you. If we're honest, doesn't it feel right, good, natural to do to mean people as they have done to us? It seems like it makes us even. When a mean person knocks us off balance, sometimes we compensate somewhere else and with someone else in our lives. Have you noticed this? We'll say, hey, I'll take it out on you because I can't take it out on my boss, my enemy, my ex, the person who cut me off on the freeway, men, women, the government, people at school. How often do you take your anger and frustration out on somebody other than the somebody who you are really angry and frustrated with? We end up living by this rule: do to others as others have done to me. It's actually fun to daydream about what we could do to them, but getting even with someone makes us even with somebody we don't even like. We end up becoming just like them. So what can we do? We can't ignore them because they won't stop. It might even give them more power over us. If we get even, it makes us even with someone we don't even like. So what do? There is a third option. During the life of David, some of you are familiar with the ancient Israeli king David. And in the time of our story today, David is a national hero. He had already killed the giant Goliath. He had been anointed and chosen to be the king at 15 years old of Israel. But the current king, Saul, is violently jealous of him. King has heard that David has been chosen to be the next king, which, as you can imagine, he finds to be a threat because he wants what every king wants, a dynasty. He wants his own son, Jonathan, to be the next king. So Saul is threatened by David's popularity, his success. So King Saul brings David close. David marries his daughter. Saul becomes David's father-in-law. And Saul's jealousy grows out of control, and he tries to murder David in the palace. David becomes a fugitive, so he's fugitive David, and is forced to run away or he would be killed. King Saul then begins a national manhunt of David. He takes his army and he is hunting him. So David is a fugitive. He's in the wilderness. He's running for his life. This, after David had trusted God and killed the giant. This, after David has been chosen to be the king. David had made the right choices, the courageous choices. If I put myself in David's shoes for the next few minutes, doesn't it seem like, wait a minute, is this the reward I get for doing good? I get to run for my life. I get to be homeless. I get to be a fugitive. I get to be away from my family. While David is on the run, other fugitives who admire David join him out in the wilderness. He ends up with an army of about 400 men. It's about 600 actually, and their families. And these people are all outlaws. They had all been mistreated by King Saul, but they couldn't get to him because King Saul was untouchable. So they found someone to take their anger, their hurt, and their frustration out on. A certain man in Maon who had property there at Carmel was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel. Now, goats and sheep may not mean very much to us in the modern world, but in ancient times, it was a tremendous amount of wealth. It's like having garages full of Teslas and Ferraris. Sheep shearing season, say that 3 times fast, in the ancient world is where the wealthy get to see how much wealthier they just became. It's like a financial report. The rich get richer. Shearing day is where you found out how much more wool was available as product for you to sell to add to your wealth. So this is a good day. This wealthy man's name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband was surly and mean in his dealings. His name actually means heavy, Nabal. He was a load, a burden, a pain to deal with. While David was in the wilderness, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. He heard about this celebration of wealth for Nabal. So he sent 10 young men and said to them, "Go up to Nabal at Carmel and greet him in my name." David sends these 10 men and tells them to use his name. People knew who David was in ancient Israel. And say to him, "Long life to you, good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is yours." It's a formal ancient greeting that basically says, "I come in peace." David is about to ask Nabal to share some of his wealth, his extra, with David and his group of an army that's with him. This is why David is even asking for this. He's asking for help. And you might think, well, why would he even think to ask? Well, this is why. "Now I hear that it is sheep shearing time. When your shepherds were with us, we did not mistreat them," David and his army. "The whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs was missing. While your shepherds were watching over their flocks by night, basically, we were right there surrounding you, protecting you. We kept enemies away. We kept animals away. We didn't let anything get taken from your wealth, your flocks. We didn't take anything from you. Because we were there, you increased your wealth. Part of your profit is due to our protection. Ask your own servant," David continues in his message, "and they will tell you, therefore, be favorable toward my men, since we come at a festive time. Please give your servants and your son, David, whatever you can find for them." Look at his language. Please give your servants and your son. He's humbling himself and asking for help. He's homeless and he's hungry. He lowered himself. He asked for whatever extra Nabal could spare with him during his time of extra and wealth that they had in part because of David and his men. When David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name, and they waited. And they waited. Nabal makes them wait and wait. While David and his men are hungry and desperate to even be making this request, he makes David's men wait. Now, David was not the kind of man you mess with. He was a very violent man. If you grew up in church, you might have this image of David as a shepherd boy with a harp singing songs to God. And that is part of David's story. But the other part is that David would routinely go and raid enemy villages. And when he did, he would slaughter every man and woman there. Whenever David attacked an area, he did not leave a man or woman alive, but took sheep and cattle, donkeys and camels and clothes. David was a dangerous and violent man, even by ancient standards. So finally, Nabal responds. Nabal answered David's servants. He says, "Who is David? Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? I don't know who you are. Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days." He's saying, I don't think David's a big deal. Who is he? I don't care who he is. He's a servant breaking away of his master. Maybe he should go back to King Saul like a good boy. I didn't ask for his help. I don't need his help. I don't want his help. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have slaughtered from my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where? No is your answer. You're dismissed. Where are you from anyway? You and David or no one from nowhere. David's men turned around and went back. And when they arrived to where David was, they reported every word. And David's response? David said to his men, "Oh well, it was worth a try." Actually, it's not what he said at all. He said, "Each of you strap on your sword." So they did. And David strapped his on as well. About 400 men went up with David. You mess with me, and you will see. You're going to pay. Notice that Samuel, David's biographer here, points out the little detail of David's sword. David's sword was unlike any other sword. It belonged to Goliath, the giant. It was a reminder, a physical, visual reminder that David didn't need to fight his own battles, that he had a power beyond himself fighting for him. It was a visual aid of God's promise and protection in his life. He didn't need to do things himself. He could turn to God for help and know that God would come through. But David, of course, like us, he's forgotten the story of the sword. Right now, he's just angry and he's hurt about how his life is going. He's a fugitive from King Saul. And Nabal has picked the wrong guy at the wrong time to mess with. If David can't make King Saul feel some pain, Nabal is certainly going to feel all of David's anger and his hurt. Think about it. 400 soldiers. This is a massive overreaction. This was going to be a slaughter of epic proportions. You've heard that hurt people. Well, this is hunted people, hunt people. David's biographer lets us in on what David is thinking. He's building up a head of steam as he's riding towards Nabal and his camp. He's going over and over in his mind what he's going to do because he's not quite sure that this is what he's supposed to do. He's preparing himself. Like when you have those imaginary arguments in your car on your way home or to work or to school. I know I've had them. You're thinking about what they'll say and then what you'll say and how you'll zing them back, how you'll win and they'll lose and the crowd will roar. David is talking to himself. He's saying, it's been useless. All my watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness so that nothing of his was missing, and he has paid me back evil for good. Have you ever felt like it's useless with someone in your life? Useless to do good? Useless to be good? David's going over all he did for Nabal and how he doesn't deserve to be treated like this. David is sick and tired of doing good only to keep getting paid back with evil. He will not be taken advantage of this time. Not this time. This time he's going to repay evil for evil. He's going to kill them all. David even invites God into the situation. May God deal with me ever so severely if by morning I leave alive even one male of all who belong to him. So he's working himself up into a frenzy. He's in the right mental state to do some damage. I'm going to kill his servants. I'm going to kill Nabal. I'm going to kill all his sons. So far, there is no hero in this story. It just keeps going from bad to worse. So suddenly our hero appears. One of the servants told Abigail, Nabal's wife, David sent messengers from the wilderness to give our master his greetings, but he hurled insults at them. The servant realized that Nabal has just what he has done to David, and she knows that a storm is now coming their way. She tells Abigail, yet these men were very good to us. They did not mistreat us, and the whole time we were out in the fields, near them nothing was missing. Night and day they were a wall around us. The whole time we were herding our sheep near them. Now think it over, she says, and see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. He is such a wicked man. No one can even talk to him. So Abigail acted quickly. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins, 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them on donkeys. So you've heard of food trucks, right? Now these are food donkeys. Beautiful and intelligent Abigail organizes a caravan of food donkeys. Together, they're overflowing with delicious goodies, favorites like fresh bread and sweet cakes and the best wine. Then she told her servants, "Go on ahead, I'll follow you." But she did not tell her husband, Nabal. And then Abigail probably gets herself looking her best and gets on her donkey and goes to meet David and his men in the road. As she came riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, there were David and his men descending toward her, and she met them. David and his 400 men are locked and loaded for battle. David is mumbling to himself about how he's not going to take injustice anymore and convincing himself why this massacre is a good idea. And as he turns the corner, he sees a caravan of donkeys, food donkeys in the distance. He might have even smelled the fresh bread, that aroma wafting up into his nostrils. And in front of this parade of food is a beautiful woman riding on a donkey towards him. It catches David completely off guard and it messes up his foul mood. Has that ever happened to you? Where you've gotten yourself in just the right mental state to do some damage, to tell someone off, and then someone does something unexpectedly kind or gracious to you? It just ruins the plan you had. Well, when Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed down before David with her face to the ground. How in the world is David supposed to stay mad when a beautiful woman is bowing down in front of him with a backdrop of delicious food staring him in the face? She says, "Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name means fool. Folly goes with him. And as for me, your servant, I did not see the men that my lord sent." She says, "You're not wrong for being angry, David. Nabal was wrong. I didn't know about what he said to your servants. If I did and I had been there, I might have been able to do something about it, but I wasn't. It wasn't my fault." And then she does something brilliant. She speaks to the man that she hopes David is. She says, "Since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands." Abigail is like, "The Lord has kept you from bloodshed, David." And David's like, "He did?" Ladies, you should take note of this. This will work on us, even when we know what you're up to. It's like a Jedi mind trick. "Honey, you're so patient with the kids. I know you're going to do the right thing." He'll be like, "I am?" "Honey, you're such a great planner and you're so creative." "I am? Yes. I can't wait to see what you've got planned for my birthday." David, Abigail is saying, "You're not the kind of person who needs to take matters into his own hands, right? You're not the kind of person who overreacts and kills people just to get even, are you?" "I guess I'm not," David says. She gives him credit for being better than he actually is. "And let this gift which your servant has brought my Lord be given to the men who follow you." Abigail did good for someone who was about to do evil to her. This completely ruins David's plans. How do you murder and pillage people who are bringing you the very things you are going to steal? "The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you fight the Lord's battles, and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live." Again, David is like, "I do?" She's like, "Yes, you do. You don't have to fight your own battles, David. God takes care of you, right? You fight his battles, not your own." And then she speaks to the 15-year-old David inside of him. She speaks to that shepherd boy inside that was called to be a king. Abigail speaks to that boy who trusted God to help him fight and kill a 9-foot giant that the entire nation was terrified of. She says, "Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God." This is interesting Hebrew language. But the lives of your enemy he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. She's talking about two things here. One, she's talking about Saul, and she's talking about the moment when David killed Goliath. Everyone knew the story of why King Saul was pursuing David, and they knew the story that David had been anointed to be king, and they knew about the story about David killing Goliath. She is saying, even though someone is hunting you to take your life away, your life is tucked away securely in God's wallet, or like at the bottom of a lady's large purse, way in there. Your life is safe. You're going to be okay. She is talking to the 15-year-old David. Fugitive David may have forgotten about that David living inside of him. The David with God-inspired dream for his future. The David who felt and knew the presence and call of God on his life. The David who only had God and it was enough. Abigail is saying, remember God's past faithfulness. He took care of you. You don't need to get even, David. For the Lord your God is with you. She essentially asked David this question. Years from now, when you're looking back at this season of your life, David, what story do you want to tell when this moment is nothing but a story that you tell? When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he has promised concerning him and has appointed him as ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. David, Abigail is saying, God is going to keep his promise to you. Have you forgotten that God has promised to be good to you always? You will be king. And when that day comes and you look back on this day, what story do you want to tell? Do you want to tell a story of a life that you built for yourself through bloodshed, needless bloodshed, or of a life that God designed for you? David, isn't the better story that you stepped back instead of trying to get even? Do you want to carry around this regret for the rest of your life? And so David comes to his senses. He's about to act like somebody he doesn't even like. And he says, may you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. Abigail, David is saying, you had good judgment. I did not. Then David accepted from her hand what she had brought him and said, go home in peace, Abigail. I've heard your words and granted your request. All of us need an Abigail in our lives, don't we? We all need somebody who can talk us down. You need someone who has access to those parts of your life that you keep everyone away from. And when they show up in our lives, we should be like David and be wise enough to listen to them. If we're honest, some of our greatest regrets could have been avoided had we listened to the Abigails in our lives. Sometimes it's a boss, a teacher, a friend, a parent, a child, even a spouse. What if we listen to the people who speak to our preferred future, to the man or woman we hope to be and want to be? They remind us that what we want immediately sometimes is going to get in the way of what we want ultimately. That what feels right now may haunt us later. So David turns around and Abigail goes home. When Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a banquet like a king. He was in high spirits and very drunk, and she told him nothing at all until daybreak. Then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all these things. His heart failed him, and it became like a stone. Maybe he got a panic attack. Then something happened that probably never entered David's mind. Maybe he forgot that these kinds of things were even possible. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal and he died. Do you have room for the unexpected, spontaneous acts of God in your life? that God might have a solution that is better than you would have ever dreamed or imagined. David didn't have to do anything. God did something. So in our story, we have Nabal, who repays evil for good, and he's maniacal. We have David, who repays evil for evil. He's predictable. And we have Abigail, who repays good for evil. She's remarkable. If you're not a Jesus follower, you're the captain of your own ship. Do your own thing. Do what you think is good for you. But if you're a Jesus follower, not just evangelical or a Christian or someone who uses God to get what they want out of him, then you have been invited to follow him. If you are one of those kinds of people who wake up every day saying, Heavenly Father, I surrender to your will, and I want it to be done on earth just as it is in heaven, then you're left with only one option. That option is remarkable, because we have been on the receiving end of remarkable, haven't we? Except we don't call our Abigail Amazing Abigail. We call it Amazing Grace. While we were still sinners, doing the worst things imaginable, the worst things so bad that we hope no one finds out about, Jesus died for our sins. He paid the price so that we wouldn't have to. He received our punishment so you and I could receive mercy. What he asks of us is to follow him. He asks you to love your enemies, to do good to those who hate you, to bless those who curse you, to pray for those who mistreat you. Let's read that again. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. You mean tolerate and ignore? No. Not just not be unkind, but to actually do good to those who hate you. If we're honest, we don't even spend much time praying for people who are good to us. And Jesus would say, I don't want you to do something to meet people. I want you to do something for them. Because that's how you keep from becoming like them. There's a bonus. Not only do you not become like someone you don't like, but you become like your Father in heaven. Jesus said, then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Think about this. Even if you don't do it, what would it look like for you to return good for evil to the mean people in your life right now? What would that look like? Or the mean people in the lives of someone you love, like your kids or grandkids or a friend. Now, living this way and following Jesus may not change the mean person, but it will change something in you. It will set you free. Do you really want to get close to God and grow spiritually? Do you want to be changed? Do you want the reality of God's presence in your life? Then do this. Live this way, and you will get to know and see the reality of God in your life. You will become like your Father in heaven. Oh, and by the way, when David heard that Nabal was dead, he sent word to Abigail asking her to become his wife. Abigail quickly got on a donkey and, attended by her 5 female servants, went with David's messengers and became his wife. I just figured you needed to know that. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Actually, it was a little more complicated than that, but it is the end of our time together today. Don't miss next week. I love you. I'm proud of you.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. And you're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We'll live for you, Jesus. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever say, yeah. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We'll live for you. Oh. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. There's no other. Jesus, the only one who could ever save, yeah. And you're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, for you. Oh God, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. So holy, and there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Would you show who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, lead us. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you, oh Lord, and I will not be shaken. Yes, I will build my life be shaken. Everything that can be shaken will be shaken, but the unshakable will remain. So I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you, oh Lord, and I will not be shaken. The unshakable will remain. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All of the ground is sinking sand. All the other ground is just sinking sand. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All of the ground is sinking sand. All of the ground is just sinking sand.